This is GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW flyers. That is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo GARIS. This is flyer number 68, entitled Understanding and Loving Women. Description. This flyer argues that it is possible and very important that new attitudes and institutions be set up by MGTOWs and masculists that make it possible for men to both understand the negative inherited attitudes of women towards men and to love women, if populations are not to be wiped out by the man strike. The flyer itself. Understanding and loving women. One of the catchy slogans of the MGTOW is, quote, "You can either love women or you can understand them." The implication is that the or is the exclusionary or, that is, you can have one or the other, but not both. This flyer argues that it is possible to have both, and that it is important that men have both. Otherwise, the population gets wiped out. So it is very important that we have both. The key concept in this regard is new MGTOW/masculist institutions that we MGTOW/masculists need to set up so that men can both understand and love women, so that men get the best of both worlds. So, how can this be done? Before answering this question, it's useful to lead into the answer by giving a bit of background. Why do many MGTOWs think that it's impossible to love women if you understand them? That is, you understand female nature. For example, a woman's hypergamy. That is, her tendency to trade up to a more exploitable male by dumping her current one coldly and disloyally, if a realistic opportunity arises. That women do not love men, but rather men's exploitability, etc. MGTOWs recognize that it makes perfect Darwinian sense that women behave this way. They evolved to behave this way. Those females in the distant past who did not behave this way had lower fitness than women who did. For example, if a woman's man broke a leg or got so depressed that his hunting ability lowered, thus... oh shit. For a moment I couldn't scroll, but now I've lost my place. For example, if a woman's man broke a leg or got so depressed that his hunting ability lowered, thus threatening to starve his family, then the woman coldly dumped him in favour of a more effective male provider of protein, to whom she traded her vagina for meat. MGTOWs accept all this. Once a man in today's world is exposed to these ideas, they make so much sense, Darwinian sense, scientific sense, that it's virtually impossible to refute them. As the MGTOWs say, once you have taken the red pill, that is, you accept the negative reality, rather than continue to live with the illusion that women actually love men and are loyal to them, no matter how poor a provider he becomes, then that knowledge is irreversible. You can't go back. You can't unknow it. The red pill knowledge will change permanently the way you see women. You will no longer believe that they love you for who you are, for your personality, your character, your intelligence, etc. No. If you as a man lose the ability to be a potential provider to a female, females will cross you off. That is, they will see you as unworthy of their attention and certainly will not give you their cunts. Evolution has made men behave in a way that makes them blind to a woman's exploitation once they start having regular orgasms with her. There's a lot of truth in the maxim that, quote, "love is blind." Females have evolved the ability to manipulate men into giving them protein, or in today's terms, money. Women use sex as their bargaining tool. A man who provides resources to a woman gets sex from her. No resources, no pussy. No Rolex, no sex. In the modern Western countries over the past few decades, women have taken power in the divorce courts, using their powerful women's lobby to push male feminist, corrupt gender politicians to give women what they wanted. Since women really care most about themselves and their children, they pushed the gender politicians to create new divorce laws in the 70s that resulted in the financial massacring of tens of millions of divorcing fathers. Typically, these men will lose custody of their kids, their house, pay child support and alimony to their fluffy ex-wives, making it one of the greatest injustices of our era. Not surprisingly, as a result of this financial massacring, this massive injustice against half of the population, that is men, 70% of young men in the US refuse to marry and have kids because they see marriage now as toxic. They know that roughly one married father in 4 will be financially massacred this way and have gone on strike. This man strike means that the young generation is reproducing only a third of its number, so the birth rate is plummeting and the US population will be wiped out within a mere century or less. Therefore, a solution to this most important of all issues has to be found. So can institutions be set up by the MGTOW/masculists so that men are prepared to have kids again with women, so that the populations of the world do not die out the way that has advanced furthest in Japan with the herbivore men, that is, a third of Japanese young men, actually I think today it's more like two-thirds of Japanese young men refuse to have relationships with women and refuse even to sex them. Masculists are more political than MGTOWs. MGTOWs are politically passive, except that at least they do make YouTube videos on MGTOW issues. So the creation of the new institutions needed to solve the population crash problem will be the job of the masculists. So what do the masculists need to do? The masculists and the MGTOWs need to continue to combine forces in educating the public, male and female, about the problems mentioned above. The top priority task is thus education. The MGTOWs are helping a lot this way. There are now thousands of MGTOW videos on YouTube for the world to see. They are having an impact as more young men walk away from marriage and fatherhood. Sooner or later, society, the media, and the gender politicians in particular will wake up and shudder at the prospect of the US population being wiped out. The masculists go further than the MGTOWs by approaching the broadcast media, trying to educate the journalists into the main ideas of MGTOW/masculism, so that the journalists get the message out to the millions, to the masses. MGTOW/masculists need to educate all males about female nature and the toxicity of today's divorce courts, persuading them not to marry and have kids. This phase of male consciousness raising is well underway, at least with young men under 35. 70% of them have got the message that marriage is toxic and avoided. With young men refusing to marry and have kids, the political pressure on the gender politicians to reform the divorce laws and bring in the paternity rejection right, etc., will not go away. The longer that young men refuse to reproduce, the more severe the political pressure becomes. MGTOW/masculists also need to educate women about their own natures. Many women themselves are not conscious of their own behaviours and attitudes, reacting instinctively towards men whom they see as, quote, inferior potential providers, as unworthy of their attention. MGTOW/masculists need to educate women in women's attitudes towards men and how negatively men feel about such female attitudes. Once women become more conscious of their own nature, they'll be more able to use the conscious, rational side of their minds to overcome their instinctive, exploitative attitudes towards men. That's the critical sentence of this whole flyer. The MGTOW/masculists need to provide women, men, society in general, with labels for traditional women who exploit men. I use the term fluffy based on the word fluff, that is, light, not serious, not adult, not responsible, not career competent, not FIP, financially independent person. Most feminists know nothing about MGTOW/masculism, so by default still have traditional attitudes towards men, seeing them as exploitable checkbooks, hence the term fluffy feminists. MGTOW/masculists need to teach society, including women, that men are the superior sex, that the genii are males, that men invent everything, build everything. Since women have shown themselves to be criminally irresponsible regarding divorce, not caring that they are ruining the lives of millions of men and destroying society, then the power to do that should be taken away from them by men. Men need to reassert themselves and take power over women's childish, selfish, even psychopathic attitudes towards men. For example, in China in 2011, the government changed the divorce law such that any assets or property that a man possessed before a marriage remained his after the divorce. Prior to 2011, Chinese fluffy gold digger women were marrying men in their millions to steal half of his total assets in a divorce that she had planned before the marriage. Chinese male gender politicians are not subject to the fluffy feminist lobby as in the US, so we're able to give Chinese men some justice. In this respect, China, a dictatorship, is ahead of the Western democracies, which suffer under the tyranny of the fluffy feminist majority. So MGTOW/masculists need to educate society and then change the gender laws, reform the divorce courts, bring in the para, men fair all the legal discriminations against men. For example, more money spent on breast cancer research than prostate cancer research, combat only for men, differences in retirement ages, heavier penalties for identical crimes, etc. Of particular importance for the masculists is to attack the root of the gender problems by forcing young women to be FIPs, by applying enormous moral pressure on young women to study FIP majors at high school in junior and senior years, so they have the prerequisites to study FIP majors, professions, techs at college, so that they can become real FIPs as adults and not parasite on a man. Masculists threaten young women that if they don't become FIPs, they will not get a man. Masculists put heavy pressure on women to pull their weight and not be fluffy parasites on men. Fluffies will not only not be married, not be babied, they won't even be fucked by masculists/MGTOWs. Such men prefer to fuck FIPs, and even then, not within a marriage, and certainly with no kids, preferring the twef lifestyle, where the man and the woman both have their own apartments and both are FIPs. Twef equals 2A, 2F equals 2 apartments, 2 FIPs. This lifestyle forces women to be nice to men, otherwise the man just walks back to his apartment so easily, cost-free. Thus, setting up these institutions and MGTOW/masculist attitudes in society will change women. Fit women can take care of themselves financially, by definition, so they don't look on men as exploitable checkbooks. Fluffies die out, rotting on the shelf, because men don't want them, not even to fuck. Men will be able to detect fluffy attitudes in women and counter them with very negative comments, and if necessary, punish women by ignoring them, killing them off slowly by neglect. Thus, MGTOW/masculist-based institutions and attitudes will allow men to have loving relationships with FIP women who see themselves as FIPs and block their own instinctive tendencies to judge men as potential checkbooks. It's possible for the human brain to learn behaviors that run counter to its basic instincts. That is what social custom and law are all about. MGTOW/masculists need to set up new customs and new gender laws that make it possible for men to both understand and love women. It is doable and needs to be done before populations get wiped out. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name, de GARIS Masculist MGTOW Flyers. Ciao.